Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I would like to tell you the story of one of the most notorious serial killers in American history, Samuel Little. We will take a look at his life from his childhood and youth to the gruesome acts he committed. Childhood and youth. Samuel Little was born on June 7, 1940, in Reynolds, Georgia. His mother was a prostitute, and Little later claimed he was born in a brothel. Early in his life, he experienced neglect and instability. He was raised by his grandmother in Lorain, Ohio, where he had a difficult childhood. The lack of parental care and constant moving deeply affected him. Even in school, Little showed signs of trouble adjusting. He was repeatedly arrested for minor offenses such as theft and fighting. After high school, he spent some time in juvenile detention and developed an early interest in violence, early criminal activity, and first murders. In the 1960s, Samuel Little began living as a drifter and petty criminal. He traveled across the United States and was repeatedly arrested for theft, fraud, and assault. In the 1970s, he committed his first known murders, but it would take many years before he was held accountable for them. Little mostly killed women who lived on the fringes of society: prostitutes, drug addicts, and homeless women. He chose his victims carefully, thinking their disappearances would attract less attention. He strangled his victims, and often the cause of death went undetermined, as many of his acts were dismissed as overdoses or natural causes. Motivation and methods. Why did Samuel Little become a murderer? His own statements suggest that he had a deep-seated hatred of women, possibly rooted in his problematic relationship with his mother and his troubled childhood. He found satisfaction in having control over his victims and dominating them in their final moments. Little killed his victims in brutal ways. He often strangled them with his bare hands, which gave him a personal and intimate connection to his crimes. Many of the murders went undiscovered or were not recognized as murders for a long time due to a lack of clear evidence and because the victims were often considered missing. Arrest and confessions. It wasn't until 2012 that Samuel Little was arrested after being apprehended at a homeless shelter in Kentucky, and his DNA was linked to unsolved murder cases in California. In 2014, he was finally convicted of 3 murders and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. But the story didn't end there. While in prison, Little began to talk about his crimes. He confessed to having killed a total of 93 women between 1970 and 2005. The police have so far been able to confirm over 60 of these confessions, making Samuel Little the deadliest serial killer in American history. Why did he remain undetected for so long? There are several reasons why Samuel Little remained undetected for so long. First, he chose victims whose disappearances were often not thoroughly investigated. Second, he constantly traveled and committed his crimes in different states, making it difficult for authorities to connect the cases. Third, the fact that many of his victims were classified as overdoses or natural deaths meant that his murder spree went unnoticed for a long time. Conclusion: Samuel Little is a grim example of how a murderer can remain undetected for decades. His story highlights the weaknesses in the law enforcement system and the dangers that arise when certain segments of the population are not adequately protected. His confessions have solved many cold cases and finally provided answers to the families of his victims, even though justice came late for many of them. Thank you for your attention, and I hope this insight into the life and crimes of Samuel Little has given you a new perspective on the challenges of solving serial murders.